the president's own party kind of saying welcome to reality to President Trump when it comes to Syria, and now new questions about how he will handle the crisis in Syria. The president says that seeing the images on television of the kids and the people who were killed by what's believed to be a noxious gas attack changed his thinking on the situation. So what do Republicans want him to do next? Joining us now, Republican Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. You got a big hearing coming up today. I want to talk to you about that. But what's your take on this emerging international crisis? This latest chemical attack has brought Syria back into sharp focus. You heard Rubio. Do you share his reality on this, that it is time for the U.S. to do more, that saying Assad is safe and not our concern was a mistake?
Well, good morning, Chris. Well, first of all, that's not how I interpreted the Secretary's comments. The reality in Syria is horrible, and it's been horrible for quite some time. I never believed that they got rid of all of their chemical weapons. They've been using, for sure, chlorine. We probably think this is now sarin gas. But I think what Secretary Tillerson was probably talking about is the reality that because of the inaction of the previous administration, the world community, Assad and Russia and Hezbollah and Iran have basically solidified their position, certainly in the western part of Syria. That's not going to change anytime real soon. And from my standpoint, what we need to do is focus on the next step. We need to defeat ISIS. But now we got to start asking some questions. What's the primary ground force that is going to defeat ISIS in Raqqa? Who is going to hold that ground? I think once we do that, it changes the conditions on the ground, and we can begin putting pressure on the Assad regime. But right now, I'm not sure what the Trump administration's reaction is going to be. I can tell you, after the last chemical attack, I spoke with then UN Ambassador Powell, and my counsel to her was strike soon. Do it now. Don't wait. I will certainly back you up. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. They waited. They dithered, came to Congress. It was way too late at that point in time. Right. So you don't signal out what you're going to do. You act. But what we have to do is we have to defeat ISIS. That's got to be our first success, our first action.
All right, but this attack that we're dealing with right now isn't about ISIS, except that it, in fact, emboldens them because it empowers their case that everybody's trying to kill them and that ISIS is their only salvation. But putting that to the side, I'm talking about what Senator Rubio said. He said that saying that Assad is safe was a mistake. Now, you seem to be suggesting that you would be in favor of doing something.
I don't believe that's what Secretary Tillerson was really talking about.
It's not Secretary Tillerson. I'm talking about Senator Rubio. Senator Rubio said it.
I realize I don't believe Secretary Tillerson was saying that Assad is going to be safe long term. I don't see how somebody who has slaughtered 500,000 of his own citizens is going to stay as a leader of that country long term. Short term, because we have done very little. They've solidified their position. That's why I'm saying our first step has got to be to defeat ISIS. Yes, utilize this chemical attack, this latest outrage. This is an affront to humanity. But I think slaughtering 500,000 people using barrel bombs, precision bombs that have targeted convoys that are there to, humanitarian convoys, right, hospitals, that's also a front as well. And yet the previous administration did nothing.
Do you think something should be done now?
Yes, we need to defeat ISIS. When we take out ISIS in Raqqa, it's going to be really kind of a twofer. We eliminate that caliphate. We end the inspiration, at least the massive amounts of inspiration, right, that ISIS has had by existing, and we change the conditions on the ground in Syria, which means we can act and we can try and stabilize the situation there as well.
But they're different things, though. I get that you're saying they're a twofer, but Assad isn't attacking ISIS. He's attacking people that he believes are political opponents to him. And similarly, Russia, which some people in the U.S. government believe is in there to fight ISIS, they're not bombing ISIS targets either in the main. They're bombing Assad's enemies.
I understand.
So how do you deal with what just happened to those kids and those people on the ground by attacking ISIS? They're different fights.
I don't want to telegraph what the administration might do, but I will support their actions against the Assad regime. But I'm just saying what is probably most effective right now. Our next step, that's really substantive, that's actually going to change conditions on the ground, is defeat ISIS, hold that ground, and that will give us much greater leverage as we move forward. Pinprick strikes right now, yeah, we could declare no-fly zones. We could probably enforce them. More difficult to do it now than it would have been prior to Russia entering the fray and putting in better surface-to-air missiles. So things have gotten so much more complex because we failed to act We need to start acting, and what I'm saying is the most substantive thing we can do right now is get that coalition of the willing, defeat ISIS, hold that ground, and it changes the equation on the ground.
All right, and you've also made a big point that national security should be our priority, protecting the homeland. Yesterday, you had a big hearing about this with DHS Secretary Kelly. Tell us, what do you think came out of that the American people need to understand?
Well, first of all, there is a great deal of consensus that our border is not secure. And my ranking member, Senator Claire McCaskill, in the hearing before that said she is not aware of any senator that isn't committed to securing the border. So good. There's our starting point. That's our area of agreement. Now we got to start filling the details. I think Secretary Kelly was very appropriate in terms of his all the above options in terms of manpower, technology, barriers where they're needed in the right spots, a priority building of those barriers. We're going to approach this, I think, in a very level-headed fashion, a very effective fashion, but we're all committed. And I think Democrats and Republicans, we have to be committed to securing our border.
One of the headlines that came out of it, I want your take on it, which was Kelly saying we're not going to have a wall from sea to shining sea. We're going to use drones. We're going to use other things. Now, that will be interpreted as a contradiction of what President Trump has promised. What's your take on it?
Well, I've always thought the wall is a metaphor for securing the border. And I think it's just been incredibly important that this president finally, we have an administration that has committed themselves to securing the border in whatever shape and form that takes. And yes, we do need better barriers. We need better fencing. We've had Border Patrol deputies and chiefs tell us fencing works. We need more of it. But we're going to do this, I think, in a very thoughtful manner. Secretary Kelly's undergoing the study right now, and we'll do this in a prioritized way, step by step, building barriers where we need to, introducing technology, building our manpower force, fixing personnel problems so we can actually hire the people we need to keep our border secure.
All right, Senator Ron Johnson, appreciate it. I've never heard the president refer to it as a metaphor, but you make a reasonable case here for why it should be that way. Thank you for being on New Day, as always.
Have a great morning.
All right.